Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Today on the show, I would like to welcome Cari Lemon, who helps individuals and organizations get unstuck, out of their own way, and soar to the next best version of themselves. She is an intuitive healer, life coach, consultant, certified website content specialist, persuasive content writer, marketing and social media support professional, and her business is called Take Flight Consulting Services. Well, we have a lot to talk about today, Cari, so let's get right into this and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure. So before we really jump into the various aspects of your personal life, can you describe your journey to this point with one word? And what would that word be?
Good question. Can I make it 2 words?
Oh, yes, of course.
Mindset shift.
Mindset shift. Okay, tell us more.
Well, just when I have found myself in stuck situations in different parts of my life, when I got to a point where I knew that this way of living or this way of being isn't working anymore and something needs to change, it doesn't come externally. It comes ultimately from my own way of thinking and my own way of being.
Well, I love that. I haven't had that one yet. So thank you for that. And as we evolve in this conversation, I'm sure that will come up again. You've got a very interesting backstory about how you transitioned from your banking job into the coaching sphere. Can you give us a glimpse of what happened and your evolution to where you are today?
Yeah. And the banking is just one little sliver of it.
Right.
It was the most recent experience where I found myself again in another position that was a really bad fit for me. Like the work I was doing and the people I was working with, it was very unfulfilling. And I started exploring, like, there's got to be another way. And I found this one entity called the Brave Thinking Institute. And that's a big thing they teach about is mindset and all kinds of things. But it got me to start thinking differently. And so I started on that path. And, we talk about manifestation, and what they introduce is, well, if you want something different at a higher frequency, you yourself within have to be at that frequency in order to bring it into what you want. Being very new to this way of considering, honestly, I would drive to work and I'd be like, this is one day closer to the last day of my job here. This is one day closer to the last day of work here. That was in October. And then January, I go to work and they're bringing me into the office and they say, we're not continuing your position anymore. And so it's like, well, I wasn't quite ready for that, but I literally feel like, yeah, the universe was like, all right, you wanted your last day of work. Here we go. Push you out of the nest.
Right. Now that's huge. Let's take it a step back. You started using those words and phrases. This is the next step to the last day. This is the next step to the last day. So you were creating a map in your brain, and your heart and your brain were meeting together and saying, there's going to be a change. You didn't exactly know when that change was going to be, but the universe had spoken and it said, come into my office.
Yeah, well, and I was already doing some things in that path. That's when I got the certification for the website audit piece. And that's when I started learning about the persuasive writing and the copywriting. And I was already doing some training in that. And then I did a program, and that facilitator had the next steps for like a 7-month program. And I had applied, and that morning she contacted me and said, I think you're a great fit for this. And it's all for supporting entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And she said, I think you're a great fit for this. Think about it if you want to join us.
Right.
And then I went to work, got that news, came home and said, yes, please, I would like to be part of your program.
Well, maybe sometimes we need that nudge. We need a little nudge to
Yeah.
get to that next step, that next
Mhm.
part of our journey that's more fulfilling, that gives us what I call that PPI, that passion, that purpose, that impact that we want to make in the world. I want to quote something from your bio where you said, gratitude only went so far when I felt like I was withering away mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. Every day when I drive to work, I experienced a visceral tension and dread every day. How did you take those steps to get free of this tension and dread? You did mention that you were kind of pushed out of the nest, even with being nudged a bit. Tell us about the courage it took to take those next steps because a lot of people find themselves in similar situations. They look at the situation and go, how did I get here? Or sometimes they get stuck right where they are. And it's scary because they don't have a plan. We've been conditioned to have a backup plan. Sometimes we don't. We become maybe apprehensive or not necessarily ready to jump into that next step. But then when something like that happens and we're kind of nudged, it's like, oh, this is right up in my face. So, how did you do this? How did you actually go forward without getting stuck or starting to depress? Tell us more.
It was like pathetic. It was literally like at the bank, you're no longer an employee, you got to leave. So, like, I'm packing up the cardboard box,
Yeah,
walking out. It was out of a movie. It was ridiculous. And I got home and I just kind of stood in my house and stared. And then there was this internal voice that was like, okay, Cari, what are you going to do? And I just was like, I'm going to create my own thing. I will not get in another position where I feel like that again. I can't. And so thankfully, I was part of the Grow program with, I want to give her a shout out, Elise Benin, with a marketing mentor. And it was this 7-month thing. And so that was a huge support of like, how do I start my business? What does that even mean? I never
yeah,
thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I just knew that I couldn't live that way anymore. And I just had to make up my own rules.
yeah.
And so I had support in that way. I didn't do it alone, you know. I mean, I was alone, but I had this online community and this mentor and support from my friends and family that are kind of like, yeah, we don't know what you're doing, but you go.
That is terrific because a lot of times people will say, well, why don't you just apply for another job? You've got this experience in A, B, and C. There's more security in that because maybe they're not entrepreneurs and they don't understand that lifestyle or those next steps because their steps looked different. And that's okay, right? We're
Yeah.
not all going to take the same approach. I'm going to tap back into something that you said early on. It really comes from within. That drive, that energy, that momentum, how you see yourself, your consciousness about things in the world and how you want to see them. What were some of the milestones that really helped you develop to a point where you can take those steps?
Well, I mean, some of the milestones were just some of my experiences like going through school, right? So my background is in music therapy. Um,
Okay.
I did a 6-month internship at a state psychiatric hospital in North Carolina. And being 20 something, whatever I was, 23 or 24, and working at a state psychiatric hospital, you learn a lot.
Yes.
I really learned everyone has a story, everyone. And you cannot, even though we do, and even though I do sometimes still, you cannot judge people. You can't. You don't know their story.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge lesson. I learned how important it is to be present when you're with someone, you listen. People need to feel heard. That's huge. So that was a big thing. And then I did other things. I went to school for an elementary education and I worked with kiddos. And that was really special. And that was a whole other kind of milestone in terms of like play and laughter. And I think we learn the best when we're enjoying and having fun and exploring and playing. And then I had some really crap relationships. So I learned a lot through those. But that pushed me into getting certificate in Gestalt therapy at the Gestalt Institute of the Rockies. That was a huge learning experience. And again, deepened my appreciation for how we listen and how we connect with people. Connection is huge, 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 and healing. We are wounded in relationship and we heal in relationship. So I learned that. That was a huge milestone. My path has been like, someone said like, oh, you're like a hummingbird. And I said, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you just cross pollinate and you're just over here and then you go over there and I was like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I think many of us do that. We have to experience certain things to get to where we want to be. And then yet we keep growing and it keeps
Mm-hmm.
maybe flowing and changing in different ways because of that growth process. I always say we always continue to self-actualize until we're gone.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love that.
And for those who think that I'm self-actualized today, no, it never stops. We continue to grow. And I want to tap back into a few things that you said. I worked in a county-wide psych facility for 3
Okay.
years. So it was the largest mental health facility in the state of California,
Whoa. Yeah.
assessing people day in, day out, doing intake. It was emergent constantly. So by working in one of those facilities, how quickly you need to make a connection with that
Mm-hmm.
human being. It
Mm-hmm.
is not wholly listening, it's about the connection.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody feels an alliance or a connection with you, they're more apt to become more calm. They're
Mm-hmm.
more apt to lean in.
Yeah.
So rather than getting into a power struggle, we lower our voices so they
Mm-hmm.
lean in and
Yeah.
listen, or we take a step back and have a breather for a moment so
Yeah.
that we can really just bring ourselves to a place where we can have a conversation. That experience that you went through with that state hospital was probably incredibly invaluable. Just learning more about people. Yes, everybody has a story. And I've worked in the human services field for, I don't know, 30 years now in hospitals,
Yeah.
in colleges, in nonprofit, and everybody has a story.
Yeah.
It's true. And if people tell me, oh, there's nothing wrong, I'm like, maybe not now, but previously we've all gone through things, and I think
Yeah.
we've been conditioned to believe or to tell people, oh, everything's fine. Everything's okay.
Ugh. My translation to that is like, I got some stuff going on, but I'm not going to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
I'm fine. My friend got me a shirt that said, it's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Oh boy. And I think that we have been, as I said, conditioned to respond that way because we think, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm way too emotive or I'm getting too emotional. And one of the things that I love to talk about is our emotional agility. And it's very
Uh-huh.
different than emotions versus emotional agility or getting emotional. And so people, I believe, have the sense that being emotional is wrong, it's
Yeah.
bad. But having emotional agility is something different. And so the way we interpret that, it looks very different too. So I love that you mentioned things such as connection, healing, understanding, internal feelings, and how you went to your next step. The next question I was going to ask you was about the program GROW, GRO. How did you hear about it and what excited you about the program?
So with that whole path of trying to figure out what, like, there's got to be something else. So I got part of the American Writers and Artists Institute, AWAI, and through them, Elise Benin did this 21-day LinkedIn challenge because I was really resistant about LinkedIn. And then I'm like, okay, I have to get over that. So I did that challenge with her. And so when she was introducing this Get Ready for Opportunity Grow 7-month program, by that point, I really appreciated her style and her principles, her pillars of how she presents things. And so when she was talking about this program and what all we would be learning, I was like, yes, each month had its own topic. So it's like, how do you market yourself? And how do you figure out what your niche is? And how do you find your people, your potential prospects? Like it broke it all down.
Yeah,
I just knew I wanted to keep learning from her.
right.
She's really good about bringing in like a cohort of people.
Hmm.
And I've met some amazing people that I'm still in touch with today. And that was 2 years ago.
That's fantastic. And so we've covered a lot of ground here. What have you developed from that situation? since you've been in Grow, since you left the bank? Yes, this is the most recent situation. So what are you developing now?
I'm learning major self-trust in a deeper way than I've ever experienced before. Resilience, like a sense of courage, and I'm not saying I haven't had doubts.
Yeah.
Or like, what the hell are you doing? There's been those days, of course, but there's like an inner knowing. I have an inner knowing that's very calm and peaceful. That's just like, you're on your right path. And I'm trusting that voice. Like, I trust that.
I love that. And as I asked my last question, I want to take it back to something that you said about every day when you drove to work. As we come to the close of the interview, my last question is, if you were to give the listeners one tip about how to move beyond something that may be negatively impacting their well-being, what would that tip be?
I call it my heart's knowing. You can call it intuition, your gut feeling, you can call it spirit, whatever's right for you. But what I've learned over and over and over again is my body energy is the truth. My mind chatter, I can't trust that all the time, but I'll feel it. Like I said, I have a calmness in my being. The mind can chatter away sometimes. But as long as this heart center, as long as that's calm, I can trust that. So if it's a relationship that isn't working, if it's a work situation, if it's a friendship, whatever it is, start paying attention and listening to your heart's knowing and trust that, even if it's scary.
Love that.
Usually when it's scary, right? Opportunity shows up when you're not ready.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happened that nudged you to the place that you are today. And here you are developing a new business, a new opportunity for yourself. For yourself. You're developing this.
For myself, so that I can be more of who I am, so I can show up for more people.
Absolutely. Where I'm going to take it back to that passion, purpose, and impact. The impact is how you help and support others. And you have brought all the skills, knowledge, abilities to where you are today with heart. And I love what you said about the chatter. Yes, sometimes we've got to quiet that chatter and just focus and bring it down to a place where you're listening to your intuition, your heart. So with all that said, I want to thank you so much, Cari, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Oh, Dr. Watson, thank you for inviting me and letting me share.
Absolutely. Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today and hearing about your journey. You can follow Cari Lemon on Facebook and LinkedIn and at carilemon.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.